So my name is Kendra Houseman, and these interviews are for Blondy's people that I would look to as a child to respect, but somebody I respect as an adult. I ask everyone the same question right at the beginning. Who are you and what do you do?
Gosh, who am I and what do I do? So I'm Kimberley Lamb, and what I do for work, I'm head of Bedfordshire's Violence and Exploitation Reduction Unit.
Okay.
But who I am, who I identify as, I guess, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a community member, I'm representative of those who look like me in very strange places that I pop up. But most importantly, I think I'm becoming that person that I would have needed when I was younger.
Let's be clear, viewers, before we go any further, I'm not worthy of this interview, right? So if I had known about Kim when I was a kid, it would have been, when I grow up, I want to be like you. There's no way around that. So that is the level we're on. Just so people know, now people need to know the level we're on, right? So this is about Blondy's people that if I had, as a kid, had people around them, would my life have been different? So you work against violence and exploitation within your unit. So what does that look like? Like, is that everywhere? Is that just in Bedfordshire?
No, it's everywhere. So, in a nutshell, how it looks is the Home Office have, based on something that happened in Scotland. So Scotland had a violent reduction unit way before we had a violence reduction unit. There are 17 other of these units out there. Bedfordshire sounds slightly different in that we are a violence reduction unit, but we've put an E in there. And there's a reason for that. So we call ourselves a VERU with the E, and that's because we're a violence and exploitation reduction unit. And that's because we know that there's some clear crossover between violence and exploitation. And generally, what we do as a unit, we are not police-led. We work in partnership with police and other partners. And what we aim to do really is to look at the causes of the causes, understand some of the reasons that some of our youth primarily are getting involved in serious youth violence, and to perhaps try and run some interventions alongside that. We're looking at a reduction of violence, but also looking at those who have the horses already bolted, to try and look at some things that we can do to support them, whether it's employability skills, educational skills, and we work, like I say, with partners. So we're working with local authorities, health, education, all of those areas, the prison service. But the idea is that we're a unit that supports some of our young people who, they can either be victims or perpetrators, and I'm still trying to find out where the division between that two is.
Sometimes, I always say when I speak that at times I was a victim, at times I was a perpetrator, but most of the time I was a victim and a perpetrator. Do you feel like people get that? Are people getting that we can be both? You know what I mean? Like, it ain't always one or the other. In your area or the area you work in, do you see that?
I mean, generally, you do have people who hang them high. Someone's committed a crime, regardless of age, that's it. You hear them, put them in, throw away the key, sort of thing. So, of course, there's an element of people who don't get that. What I'm really concerned about is those who don't get it, but are in positions of power. And they're part of power constructs, because that's where we have that issue with young people, perhaps a 14-year-old, not quite being looked at as being a child, and being dealt with the same way perhaps as someone who's older. And again, we also know even up to the age of 25, you can still have those differences as well. So do people get it? There's lots of people like myself, like you, that are out there doing wonderful things, and we get it and we understand it, and we understand that it's going to be part of stopping what's going on there. Yeah. But equally, there are people out there who don't get it. They're all about enforcement. They're all about, locking the young people up, even adults who are dealing with trauma. So you're always going to battle with it. Generally, it's anecdotal. I can't say over there. I can't say Bedfordshire, for example. But there are enough of us who do get it within the police force, within the local authorities, education and health, to hopefully try and make a change. And that's where I think our violence reduction unit is central to that hub, making sure people do get it, because it's key, or else it will go on and on and on.
You're the voice out there. I mean, I read your tweets, I see the stuff you do, and you're the voice of the youth. Well, you're the voice that's saying, hang on a minute, we can't just say this person is this and this person is that. We've talked before, haven't we? And we've talked about stuff, and you're saying the same thing I'm saying, is things like this. They go into a house, the police, whoever, they go into a house, there's 3 young people, but yet the child is still criminalized. Like, even though they might be there for whatever reason, they're still criminalized. And for me, I get the essence from you that you just don't see it like that. You see that there's a contextual safeguarding that needs to take place for every young person.
Absolutely. And if I'm honest with you, I'll touch on it now. That comes from my own upbringing.
Okay.
So, you know, I myself, I was raised on a council estate. We've talked about ACEs before, adverse childhood experiences, and the impact that can have on your trajectory in life. And that sort of default, almost, I hope, a judgmental sort of area where people assume because you come from there, this is going to happen. Well, coming back to this sort of arena, for me, I know that there are people I grew up with, and some have had the key. You know, there's some of them been lost and the key has been thrown away.
Yeah.
Justifiably, may I add.
Yeah.
But when I come back to myself as a child, I tend to think to myself, how did you get here? Who are you, Kimberley? And I can actually see those interventions, soft interventions, you know, along the way. A caring grandmother who stepped in when my mother couldn't step in. A teacher who looked at me and thought, no, you can do a little bit more in your work. You know, you can be somebody. You know, other people who are aspirational that you looked at, you know. So again, coming back to my estate, we didn't really talk about things like university and aspire to that. And in fact, I'm going to be really honest with you, we didn't aspire to even aspire to go to the next postcode. You know, we were West Londoners, so we definitely didn't go South London. Don't say that personally, but we never went over to your side. You know, we had our own thing going on over here. But what that did mean is socially, economically, we were keeping ourselves in a bubble. Yeah. And we perhaps weren't open to those opportunities and those interventions. And we have to think, why did we feel that way? You know, what's happening in the system? And then coming back to my circumstance, I think because I had those positive interventions, positive interactions with adults on there, I can see that it can make a difference, you know, not just with myself, with others. But equally, I can see what happens when you have a lack of that happening in your life as well. You know, I know that side of the story.
You're kind of the proof of the pudding, aren't you? Because you've come from a background that a lot of our young people are coming from, and I know that. And that sort of not being able to go out of your postcode and university not being an aspiration. University was never said to me at any point in my life. Did no one say, you know, you could go uni? That was never discussed. It was how they're going to keep me out of prison. That was the conversation I heard as a child. How do we keep her out of prison? And you've gone beyond the boundaries. You've gone, actually, I recognize that I've got some adversities going on, but actually I'm going to push myself. So what was the next step for you? Did you think to yourself, right, I ain't taking this. I'm gonna go and be someone. Is that what happened, or did it come out about some other way?
You know, it wasn't overnight, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. You know, so for me, it was beginning to see people who looked like me, who could do what I think possibly I could do. So that did start with my grandmother. So in fact, actually, although I say we weren't taught about, you know, university and stuff, I meant more the educational system.
Yeah, education.
I'm 50. So, you know, back in the day then, it was very much like that. But my grandmother, on the other hand, swore blind we were going to be prime ministers. We were going to be the first black prime minister. So she was very aspirational for us. And she really did push education because it meant something. Yeah. If I'm honest, when I was much younger, although I was a reader, I used to think, no, I can't see that. We can barely see us on TV, let alone getting into those places. So where I think the change happened is, and I've got to be careful here because I'm still friends with a lot of school friends, but the change for me happened a lot was when I was in education and I was being told by a particular teacher, for example, that, you know, you're quite capable in the area of maths. And then I'd look and think, oh, no, I'm not. Blah, blah is better than me at maths. And I'd look at blah, blah. And actually, the only difference between me and blah, blah was colour. Yeah. And blah, blah felt good at maths and knew about university and had a higher expectation from them, not just for within their families, but in their communities and from the teachers. That's really important as well. So that change for me happened when I was sort of watching and mirroring. And I was thinking, well, actually, I finished my test quicker than you, or actually I scored more than you. And then I would start to speak to other students. And one of the things that I know bugged me when I was younger was that we were always, as black kids, always pushed towards sports. Nothing wrong with that. But we weren't pushed in the academic arena. And the more and more I started to see that we weren't included in the what we call the spelling bees, you know, spelling competitions, and when I don't know, the TV came round, and we did have that once. They came round and they wanted to do some sort of test, a geography test thing. We were never picked, but we were always picked to be the best runners. You know, always picked to go and win those medals. that really was a switch for me, because I was thinking, well, no, we can do more. And then I started to seek out more through books. We didn't have internet at the time. I'm really going to show my age here. Reader's Digest. I used to really read that a lot. And then I discovered, actually, there's a big world out there beyond West London with people who are achieving wonderful things. I was very curious as to why we were never told about these wonderful things of people who looked like me. But that's where my digging started. And then I started to put myself in places and to make sure that I was there, that I was curious, that I was asking questions, and I was asking why. I still do that now, to the annoyance of many.
Being part of a marginalised community, and that's what I'm going to call it, a marginalised community. So for me,
because it is.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. Like, obviously I'm white, obviously, but all my friends, all my core friends were of colour, of different colour. And so I noticed the same thing. Like, my pals were pushed towards sports, even if they didn't like football. I'm not going to name names, but people watching this will know exactly what I'm saying. We had a couple of boys that were good at football, but we had a couple that were shocking. Yet they were pushed towards sports. I was never pushed towards sports. I was always do academic, and I wasn't very good at it. Yet I'm 40, yeah. I still see it now. I still see young people in marginalised communities pushed to what they think that they fit the mould. So it's frustrating to think that both of us have grown up, have seen it, have been part of it, and it still exists now. It must be so frustrating for the young people of today. And then that breaks out when we're looking at prison sentences and stuff. I understand why people say, have I been given extra time because of the colour of my skin? Mums say that to me. A mum said to me the other day, I feel like my son has been punished harder for the colour of his skin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even need to validate what you're saying, to endorse it, to give reasons. We just need to look at David Lammy's report, you know, so that speaks for itself. There's definitely some sort of disproportionality happening throughout the criminal justice system. So that speaks for itself. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. It's frustrating to still see it happening. That being said, my son is a sports scholar, so he did go down the route of soccer, but he sure as hell knew he also had to do his university degree. So he's doing business and accountancy at the moment. Very skilled soccer player. Nothing. I'm saying soccer, guys, because he's abroad. Sorry, football player. But you know, at the end of the day, the point is, there's nothing wrong with that. We've seen some excellence, and I know them, as you do, you know, in our own year, that have really aspired. There's nothing wrong with that. But we can do other things. We can excel at sports, but we also can excel at academia. And that was my thing. I wanted that to be out there. And for the young people I'm working with now, I want them to be aspirational and raise aspirations, as opposed to this default position that because you come from or because you look like, this must happen to you. No.
When I had my oldest son, and I've wrote about this before, the social worker made it very clear that putting him in care would be the best thing. Because of me, this kid would achieve nothing. And he's gone and got a physics degree. And my other son's in university. Now, I'm not going, oh, my son's in university, because I'm just saying is I give them options.
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not about you should or you shouldn't. It's about giving our kids options. If we give our young people options, it gives them the mind growth to move forward, I believe. So I want to talk about youth violence. So what are you seeing? What are you seeing around youth violence? Is it increasing? Is it slowed down? What are you seeing at the moment? Because you're not out there. You're having to work from home, aren't you?
I am, but we are out there actually as a team. So we're still there. We're still, you know, connecting with people out there. So, I mean, COVID related, what are we seeing with youth violence? Well, we're seeing that it's changed. You know, county lines are no longer being done as visibly, I will say. As we think that's out there, you know, that it was pre-COVID. You know, our missing children, that's slightly different now.
Okay.
You know, so that's gone down. It's still out there. People like you and I know that it's still out there. So there's two sides to this story. I can either answer the question and line up with what we see in the media, or I can answer it quite honestly. It's still out there.
Yep.
Obviously, there are obvious things that have suppressed it in terms of physically going out on the street, doing what you did before COVID. But it's still out there. There's still a threat. And as far as I'm concerned, not to be alarmist, there's a ticking time bomb with all this trauma that's happening at the moment. And I mention it in the vein of serious youth violence because, you know, if you imagine, rightly or wrongly, that you've got a young person who perhaps actually is topping up his mum's electricity. So he's doing his mum's lecky for whatever reason, doing his, you know, he's up and down the train lines. That's impacting in the home, as well as other economical restraints on there. But also for himself, if he's self-sufficient at 13, 14, and trust me, there's some grown, young 13, 14s acting like grown men coming in, they've got their bills to pay as well. Not being able to do that, I suggest that when lockdown eases, we're going to get some of them going back to their activities to try and earn that type of money. And you know, that built into, it's multifaceted, that builds into the way that they live, it builds into inequality, it builds into deprivation. There's so many reasons why someone will want to go back to that lifestyle or will miss the income from that lifestyle.
Everything you've just said, so you've not seen the interviews I've done previously because only 3 have gone out. You're going to love this. Everyone I've spoken to of a certain background has said exactly what you said. There's a spike coming, and I'm not going to name who, but look at Paul McKenzie's video. He talks literally word for word what you just said. You've not spoke and seen his video. He just said the same thing. The problem is there's young people right now accumulating debts that they need to pay.
That's right.
Because when lockdown happened, they would have had their food, their drugs, and that had to go somewhere. So I wonder how prepared we are as professionals for this spike. I personally am prepared, but it's worrying, isn't it? Like, how prepared are people for this scourge that is going to happen?
I mean, I talk to my team about that, and I do talk on a wider avenue about that, but also about this opportune moment that we may have to be talking to perpetrators who actually want to come out of the lifestyle. So, you know, there's so many different things we could be doing in preparation. We could perhaps be liaising a little bit more. You know, there are some who have actually enjoyed, and we're hearing this, being at home in what has now become a safety point. And I say that because a lot of them have run away because they don't see it as a safe place to be. Some people are at home thinking, wow, I can reflect now, from young people, and I don't want to go back. There's this fear of going back out there. This is a moment perhaps that we should be capitalising on, you know, with that. And there is this ticking time bomb, and I hate to use that, but there is this ticking time bomb. But actually, we know there are enough of us professionals talking about it. Let's do something about it. Let's talk less, and let's collectively do something about it. Some of these things are quite obvious.
They are.
Quite obvious. Yeah.
It's interesting. The people that I'm talking to around this video are saying the same thing. Let's use this as an opportunity to channel to them young people that maybe we couldn't have reached before. So it feels like a lot of us have got that same feeling about what do we do next? I've been looking at some of the stuff that you're doing. Can you tell me about #KnifeFree?
Yeah, I can. So it's, I mean, I use that as a hashtag. It's actually the Home Office's one, and their hashtag knife free is just talking about being knife free. You know, the statistics around, we speak to a lot of young people who carry a knife for safety, for protection, but we know that knife is more likely to be turned around and used on you. So, you know, the whole knife free thing isn't just about don't carry it, you know, and you're going to harm somebody else. We talk within the framework of the fact that you yourself could be harmed statistically with that knife, and that you're more at risk if you have something with you to use it and then to end up getting yourself in a lot of trouble, and worse still, fatalities, which we know have happened.
You promoting it, and you promoting it seems to have an impact. So I've been looking at some of the stuff that you've done on Twitter. People listen to what you're saying, so even though it's a government initiative, when you put it out there, people are like, oh yeah, Kimberley's saying it must mean something. So I think that people with a voice need to talk about, I talk about it, we need to talk about this knife issue, because young people aren't getting the fact of the harm they could cause to themselves. I said to one boy a little while ago, I said, are you trained in using a knife then? And he was like, what do you mean? I said, but are you trained? Like, and he's like, no. And we talked about it, and afterwards he said, miss, I carry it because I'm scared. And for me personally, when I carried a knife as a child, I was scared. I didn't think anything else. It was fear. So I think we need to recognise that, don't we?
We do, and there's some work that I do with David Kirby, who is a consultant at one of our local hospitals, and he unfortunately has dealt with trying to save lives and you know, and equally losing lives of young people on his table. And he has been fantastic in coming around, supporting what we're doing in the Very, but also talking to young people about that very thing, saying to them, do you understand that the knife that you may be carrying could be inflicting an injury on yourself? And the other thing that he and I talk about, David and I talk about quite a bit, is not just the deaths, which are sad, that we're seeing, and I think being polarised by the media. It's the young people that we know that are in wheelchairs, that are using colostomy bags,
Yeah.
Okay, that have got life-changing injuries, you know. We don't talk about that enough, because if we did, whilst talking about knife free, perhaps we'll get the message across.
For me as well, I think there's a hidden trauma. If you've ever stabbed anyone, as much as you should be punished if you stab someone, of course, I'm just going to put it out there. You know, the trauma from you inflicting that injury on someone can be massive, but it's not addressed sometimes because the punishment is seen as what needs to happen. So I think we do need a holistic approach to our young people to look at, we are perpetrators and victims, and how do we support that? Yeah.
And there's some commentators who have mentioned that. Sorry, Kendra. There's some commentators who mentioned that and equated it to go into war as well as some of the trauma. So we talk about PTSD and bits and pieces. So there's a whole area there. And I've witnessed the stabbing myself as a young child. So, you know, I can vouch for that. There's trauma behind it.
I said on a different interview, it's mad, it will come out. I said in a different interview that I compare stuff that I saw to being like a war. I saw stuff that, when I think about it now, but I had a young boy who was working with a gang. He was involved in a gang, and when I first met him, he was this bolshy little bad boy, and then he saw some stuff and he started having anxiety attacks that it still gets me emotional. He used to shake in my arms and say, you know, talk about the things he'd seen. But when I went to get him mental health support, they said, well, if he talks about his crime, we'll have to pass it on to the police. Well, and what do you do with that? You know, I don't know. So the trauma that comes from youth crime in all different ways is just multi-layered, isn't it?
It is, and you know, that actually sums up the young people that we're working with. We all know, those of us who work within safeguarding, if there's anything that's said to us that, you know, suggests that person may be at risk or somebody else is at risk and blah, 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 we do the right thing because that's what the system has said that. But there is a lot of holding back and talking to people and telling, I call it truth to power, in whichever way, not just within the workplace. I'm talking about young people speaking up and talking because of that fear. And I think coming back to the whole idea of violence reduction units is that we have to recognise that. We have to recognise if we really want to know the causes of the causes, we need the right people, number one, to be heading these things up and being in them and working in there, who can understand that language. If you were in a school, I say this to people, you probably would hear in a school in an inner city, someone saying they're going to shank someone 1,000 times. If I was to sit and fill in a form for every person who said they were going to do that, and I don't want to alarm anybody out there who thinks you need to fill in a safeguarding form all the time, my point is, if you understand the way of the streets and you understand the language and you understand the young people, and you understand a lot of what we're seeing is a manifestation of trauma in their language. You know, someone will tell you that they've shanked someone and actually they're probably bigging themselves up and they haven't. You need the right people in those spaces to be able to support before we report, you know?
Absolutely. What's your feeling? And I mean, I know my answer to this, but what is the importance of multi-agency working for these young people? Why does it matter if we work together or not?
I think it's very important. I think it's really, really important. And there's two sides to that. There's the talking the talk, because everyone's talking about multi-agency report, multi-agency working and blah, blah, blah. And we know that works in theory. But there's actually walking the walk, which is very different on there. So for me, multi-agency working is absolutely paramount that we do that, because you've got different specialities. We know that actually that is what a wraparound service is. That's what a holistic looking after is.
It looks like,
you know, a bit like a family. If you've got someone that's a bit toxic or a bad apple, and I'm being honest here, that isn't in it for the right reasons, then that's where you get a breakdown. That's where you get a breakdown. So we could talk about multi-agency working, co-working till the cows come home. But if you have a whole agency or a whole culture that doesn't understand why you need to work together for the betterment of the young person, then it's all chat as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think that it will change? Do you think that multi-agency will improve? Do you think we've got the capacity as human beings, with everything that's happened, to make that change? You go, right, we need to work together. Do you feel that change is coming? I'm not sure.
I do. For me, I can only talk about Bedfordshire at the moment, where we're really doing things. I can see those green shoots. I can see that we're working really well together, and that's great. And that we're dealing with challenges and barriers and things. But I think that, to be honest, it's that Rome wasn't built in a day. within these structures, within government structures, we've got cultures.
Yeah.
So I can sit around a table in a strat meeting and I can have a social worker with the best will in the world,
Yep.
who understands about, multi-agency working, we want to do things together. She needs to have that backup. I need to have that backup with what I'm doing. So to answer your question, there are certainly a lot of well-meaning people out there,
Mm-hmm.
different agencies, different parts and what have you, who could make this work. We need the cultural, the power structure to be working as well.
I think this is a good place to explain kind of what I'm doing with Blondy's people, because I've not said it in any other videos. So what I'm doing, I don't know if you've clocked this or anyone else has, I'm interviewing people that is, if Blondy had had that team around her, life would have been different. And then when I've interviewed everyone, I'm going to put it together and I can present it as a team to say, does she need to have Kimberley Lamb, or does she need somebody like that? And my hope is by showing all these different people. So for me, yeah, if you had been, if there had been a reduction, violence and exploitation unit around Blondy as a child, I'm sure life would have been completely different. That didn't exist. That wasn't even on the radar. And because I was a white female, I didn't get recognised as being involved in gangs. Nobody wanted to help me until I become the victim of exploitation. So I'd done all this stuff and that was ignored kind of. So I think for having somebody like you or the unit there would have made a big difference. Do you agree? Do you think that our generation missed out?
Yeah, I'm really biased, but you're absolutely right. I love what you're doing, by the way, and I really love the idea of these selected people, hopefully me included, getting together, because I started out saying exactly the same thing as what you said, that who I am is hopefully I'm becoming.
Yes.
I have to say I'm becoming, because I'm not there yet. I'm becoming the person that should have been around, that I would have needed when I was younger. And you're expressing the same thing. So I do think that we have now, on reflection, we are now growing and we are now providing and we're now trying to be. We're not doing what I hate, and I'm sure you hate, the tick box thing, or reactive. I can't bear the reaction. County lines, guys, it's been around forever and a day.
All right, so I wasn't going to go down this road, but that's just right. So this is the thing. I had this conversation with other people. So I hate the word county lines for a start, right? But kids, and I've said this in another interview, people have been going country for a long, long time, okay? So when I was 12, I met my first countryman. So they were the ones that only went country, yeah? Not county lines, that won't chat about, but he went country. And then when I remember I was exploited. I didn't go country. When I was forced to go country, so when they say things like county lines is a new thing, I'm just like, so what do you call that then? What do you call what was going on there?
What did you call that? And, it's even like this term hard to reach, which I'm sure you hate as well as I do. And it always amazes me when we ever get told this is a hard to reach set of people.
Yeah.
I'm just breezing up and reaching them. So hang on. Are we hard to reach as practitioners, as a system, or is it them? I think it's more us. What does hard to reach mean? What does it mean? So it is this terminology. And I guess this is what we have to do. We have to be vocal.
Yeah.
I have little respect. Here I'm going to be controversial.
Here we go.
People who sit in these spaces and are quiet and just doing their day job. We're not in these spaces.
Just go home.
Quiet.
Just go home.
Just go home.
If you haven't got fire, what are you doing here? If you haven't got fire, what are you doing here? But maybe it'd be bad if there was too many people like us. Maybe things would just be a bit mental. We'd be out there like...
I got a bit of a theory about that. Maybe if there were too many people like you and I, maybe we would be the ones who were behind bars and and the key would be thrown away. Because I guess my point is, and obviously it's not to knock any of my colleagues or anything like that, but you cannot stand in this space and not necessarily want to make a difference. We're not here. We're not going to, feed the world.
No.
But you have to be here for a purpose, because these young people need that. They need you to be patient with them. They need you to believe that they can. They need all of these things. And if you're just coming to do your 9 to 5, or you're just doing it because it's a great photo opportunity for you and your organisation, I've got no respect for you. You've heard it here. Go home.
You're going to like this, right? I've nicked this off your LinkedIn, right? And it says, because when who are you? No, you're going to like it, right?
I haven't updated that for a while.
Doesn't need to, right? Because you didn't know I was going to read this out, right? But this shows how genuine. This is why people, look at her panicking. Why are you panicking? Watch this. Who am I? It's simple. I have a personal passion for community safety, empowering young people and adults in all aspects of education, work, and community life. And you didn't even know I was going to read that out, and you've just backed that with your own words.
I thought he was going to talk about me winning the spelling bee or something when I was 8. Yeah, that's me. That's me in a nutshell. You know, it will be an irritant to some who perhaps don't want me in that space, and for some they'll run with it, and we're vibing the same way, and we want the same things for our young people.
To have genuine people like you around is a godsend, because I know full well that if you was in a meeting and somebody chatted some rubbish, you wouldn't have it, and that's why you're part of Blondy's people, because you're never gonna know a child is suffering and think, oh, I can't deal with that right now. You're like, no, this is being dealt with. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, I think that here's the thing, the other thing perhaps we never spoke about, you mentioned diversity earlier, it's that resilience. I think I never look back on my life, and I don't know how you feel, but I never look back on my life and have any regrets now. For me, it's lesson learned, but one of the main things for that is resilience. So yes, if I'm in the meeting and you're talking, as the kids say, you're getting it from me. I'm not going to sit there. I won't agree to anything that I don't agree with. There's compromise, there's adult compromise. You learn that you can't be out there throwing hands all the time, you know, and that's some of the things that we have to learn, I guess, as skills to our young people.
I'm still learning. You know, I'm still learning that.
Yeah, and it's difficult, you know, and I do appreciate that. And you can't get into these spaces always being that combative. I can't be Angela Davis all the time, but
yeah, you can.
Definitely, you're absolutely right. If I sit around the table, people will know this. You're not going to talk rubbish to me. I'm going to challenge it. And in challenging, I'll also accept I could be wrong. But my thing is, let's dialogue. Prove me wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong. And we can move on. But don't just verbatim give me this rubbish, because I'm going to challenge you.
I love it.
Lives depend on it. Yeah, lives depend on it.
And if more people thought like that and realised that lives do depend on our voices, we are the voice of the youth that can't project that voice. Sometimes in a meeting, the child voice isn't there, so we're the one that's being there. You've got to fight that fight, and that's that.
You've got to. That being said, it's not always an easy space to stand in. So, you know, it's for me as a mother, I've always told my children to challenge things, to ask why, and to also appreciate that what you're challenging, you may be wrong. You may be wrong, but if you don't spark that dialogue, equally, it's not an easy place to stand. No. It's not. You know, this is no surprise to you, but there's not a lot of heads of violence reduction units who look like me, a black female. So that will come with its intersectionality. That my protected characters, they rub some people up the wrong way visibly. And that's a fact. So sometimes when you speak, people don't want to hear what you've got to say.
Do you think that just makes you stronger, though? Do you think it just builds up more resilience?
Absolutely. Again, resilience. Absolutely. But I think, if I'm honest, my resilience to this point has allowed me to do that. Okay. So it's allowed me to be in that space. And I'm going to be really honest with you. You know, I'm not this tough cookie. My husband will tell you this. I'm not this tough. Well, I can hold my own. I ain't though. But what I mean is, I'm quite an emotional person. Yeah. I wear my heart on my sleeve. So what I don't want to come across as saying, you know, anybody who comes at me, I'm like, I don't want to be in those positions. So there are times when I walk out of a meeting, for example, and I think, wow, that was so challenging. Why has it always got to be so hard?
Do you know what? Today, I've had a bad week of fighting other professionals, and I'm not going to, but I've had a hard week. And I've said to my very close friends, what happens when I can't fight anymore? And why do I have to keep fighting? Because I get the same thing. People think I'm very hard, but there's some things that floor me, and only my closest people see that. Do you know what, Kimberley? Why are we still fighting the same? Why is it still a fight? Like, just stop it. And that's the thing people don't realise is, I don't know about you, but I get tired sometimes of.
I get very tired. Yeah. And that actually was my point. You know, my point that I'm very unapologetic about this. People who, I was going to say people are close to me know this, but equally people who are not close to me know this. I can be vulnerable. And I feel no way to show that side of me as well. So, you know, resilience isn't just about coming up against things and being able to push through and bounce back. It's, I think, showing your vulnerability as well. And I can be vulnerable because I have had those adverse childhood experiences. I'm being honest. I do look at some of the young people and I think, gosh, I truly know what you're going through. I truly know what you're going through. Not in a patronising way. Obviously, I would never say that to them, but I sit there and I think, gosh, what can I do different to change your
Yeah.
trajectory? So there is a vulnerability as well
Yeah.
as a resilience around me. But I think that makes me me.
It does make you.
I don't tuck it away all the time. People will see that, and that's where my passion comes from.
For me, my biggest problem is sleep. So I try and leave my job at the end of the day. That's a lie. I don't. My job is not safeguarding children. I safeguard children. I just happen to do that as a job as well. I live it and breathe it, a bit like you. So for me, my vulnerabilities come at night time when everything starts slowing down, and then I'm 1 o'clock in the morning thinking, so what exactly do I do with Charlie? Like, what exactly am I going to do with him? So I know that you're like that, and I think that.
Sure.
I think people know that as well, and they respect the fact that you're fire, but also know that you take that stuff home with you, and that's something from our adversities as children. We carry that with us.
Yeah, you take that responsibility, and actually, this really is from our childhood. You feel responsible for other people. So I've always felt responsible for those that I grew up with, my good friends who are no longer with me through crime. And I mean physically with me, and not in a prison, that have died. That pain still stays with me. I still think to myself, should I have spent more time with them? Should I not have left the ends? That happens all the time. Should I have not left the ends? Sort of thing. So there is that responsibility that you feel that you have to do. And a lot of what I do, I'm responsible for my own children. But I say this all the time. Every child out there feels like my responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to that thing where I talked about being a black female and intersectionality and being treated differently, I never quite understood that, because for me, when I look at children, I see children who are going to be adults sitting at these tables. I see no colour. And when I say I see no colour, that's another one of my annoying things. I want people to see my colour. So sorry, let's rephrase that. I don't see it as any different. Vulnerability is vulnerability. I want them to aspire and to do extremely well, regardless of where they come from. So when I come into an adult world where people make a big thing of you being different, looking different, putting you down, I just don't get it.
No.
But maybe that's the answer as to why some of our children are quite damaged.
Because
it's that judgmental. Yeah. You will go that way because you look like that, or because you come from that type of background. It's so wrong.
I think that, this video is aimed at lots of people, but I think if a young person watched this and heard you speak, I think you'd bring them comfort in knowing that they're not mad in thinking that they feel different. I think words are very powerful in the fact of they can own that. Yeah, that's actually happening in some areas, and I think it's important that it's said, and that's that. It's important it's said. Okay.
Definitely.
I ask everyone a last question, so I'm going to let you breathe it in a minute. Okay. What have you learned about yourself from lockdown?
Gosh, a lot actually. If I shoot from the hip,
go on.
I lost my younger brother through COVID. So if that hadn't happened, maybe my answer would be slightly different.
Okay.
I'm forced on top of the normality of COVID to be really, really reflective.
All right.
So I've learned the little things that, when someone calls you, you call them back. Maybe you can set your work aside. That's an important one for us who don't sleep very well. Maybe there are other things that you need to really pay attention to. That's one thing on there that, putting time into people.
Yeah.
And making time. But I think this is the other thing, making time for yourself as well. And what I've learned a lot about that is that, you can help in different ways. So the job that I do is helping towards the narrative that we talked about. My silent time in my garden. So, I'm a bit of a tree hugger. I tell people that. I grow my own. That's me, yeah. I grow my own. And that time can be just as precious, as important as you sitting there and planning for your next meeting. Because it gives you time to sort of think about what you're doing, maybe not be so rational about stuff. And also what I've learned about myself is that actually the work that we do is very, very traumatic. And I know I'm perhaps stating the very, very obvious here. No. And as resilient as we are and as tough as we are, we need that time, because it does feel like you're in a war.
Yeah.
And lockdown has really taught me that I say this to everybody. I say this to the young kids, the race is not for the swift, it's for those who can endure it to the end. I think that's what it is. And I say, pace yourself. I say to my team, pace yourself. It's the long game.
Long game.
But actually, what I've learned is I need to say that to myself. I'm in it. For anybody watching this video who thinks that Kimberley's going anywhere, however hard you try, I'm in it for the long game.
Always.
I'm in it for the long game. So because of that, what I've learned from lockdown is that I do need to pace myself, because I want to be around to be able to do this type of work, to hand the baton over to those who are younger than me, and to keep this going, so that we this is a sustainable thing, not just something that happens to be the thing the media talks about at this time.
No. Yeah. This has been one of my favourite interviews, and I'm going to say it. I'm sure anyone watching this is saying this, but for me, you're one of the queens around child protection. So you deserve that down. You deserve that downtime, because I wish that you'd been there when I was a kid, is all I'm saying. And I appreciate you talking to us.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.